weekend originally set to be Jim Miller against Bobby Green. Green is out, and Donald Cerrone was booked every other weekend to take on Joe Lauzon, but those fights fell out. So up at 170 pounds, yes, 170 pounds, Cowboy Cerrone is going to be taking on A10 Jim Miller, who's looking to push his win streak to 3. And if you look at these guys in the overall pantheon of UFC lore, they each rank very highly in all-time categories. So for Jim Miller, he will extend and make it 40 fights in the UFC. Like, how wild is that? He debuted in 2008, years and years and years ago. But the craziest part about it is nobody's going to be able to stake a claim until this Saturday, because they're both tied for #1 overall in most wins in the UFC. Tied with Andrei Arlovski at 24. How crazy is that, Matt?
It's absolutely insane to me, and especially, okay, without looking at your notes, Craig, because I'm assuming it's in there, do you know where these guys originally fought their first fight?
Not WEC.
It used to be a mecca of fights, but it isn't anymore.
IFL?
No, Atlantic City for the UFC.
Yeah.
Atlantic City was where it was at for boxing, and even MMA for a short period of time. It was a big deal. The Vegas of the East Coast to many people. And it is wild that you don't really hear about Atlantic City anymore being one of those fight destinations or a big fight town. But again, for the longest time, it was sort of seen as that, which is wild to me that we've gone so far away from it. But Donald Cowboy Cerrone and Jim Miller have been in the UFC since Atlantic City was a big deal. So that's really my best way of aging this fight.
But when I do look at this one, because a big talking point has to be that this one's at welterweight. For Cerrone, he's realized intense success at 170. His fight against Joe Lauzon was to be at 155. They both weighed in, and then after the fact, Lauzon's knee locked up. He got it fixed up, so you'll love to see that. But for Cerrone, well, he had a beard, and he shaved it, and then at 155, he looked ghastly on the scale, which isn't, uncommon for Donald Cerrone at 155. And don't get it twisted, Cerrone's had success at 155, and his most recent run of success was at 155. Like, look at that fight against Alexander Hernandez. We had bad blood, and Cerrone was on the winning end of that one. Fights Mike Perry at 170, looked amazing in that one. But I do look at it for Jim Miller. He was a 2007 US KBA welterweight champ, but since that time in 2007, he had one fight at a catchweight of 162.6 pounds against Thiago Alves, because Alves couldn't make weight at 155.
He could barely make weight at 170 and then decided to move down to lightweight.
And Jim Miller beat him. Now, that was a unanimous decision win at UFC 205, and then after that, the only fight Jim Miller's had outside of 155 was at 160, a catchweight against Roosevelt Roberts, where Roosevelt went for a big action, fumbled, and then, like fumbling the ball, Jim Miller was able to pick it up. So for Broncos, let's ride. Jim Miller's on this win streak. And again, the weirdest part for me when I look through Jim Miller's run from 2019 to now, he's 5-3. The losses are to good fighters. The wins are over. Jason Gonzalez is one of the wins. If I ask any MMA fan, hey, you remember Jason Gonzalez in the UFC? They're not going to know who he is. Do you know who Eric Gonzalez is? No, you don't. But Jim Miller was able to cold cock him and knock him out. The most impressive win from 2019 to now. It's not Clay Guida. That was a knock him out, drag him out 1 round. It was his last fight against Nicholas Motta. He was fighting a guy who could not pick up Jim Miller. Miller was piecing apart the inside leg. And then when it came to it, Miller was really mixing in his boxing combinations while landing to the body to the point where Motta couldn't figure him out. And Iron Motta make his UFC debut, primarily known as a striker, and Jim Miller knocked him out. That was so impressive to me for Miller as an underdog to be almost 39 years old. I can't get over that win that Jim Miller had his last time out.
I fucking love this fight, Craig. I'm not going to lie. Because for Cowboy...
I went deep.
And, this is such a fun fight. And I know we were both really big on this when Cowboy was fighting Joe Lauzon. Just, hey, at 170, if they did this matchup, I think Cowboy would probably win that. They're very close to each other, sort of in the whole greatest game of their careers, really. I don't think Lauzon or Cowboy are going to be looking to have a lot more fights after their original matchup. But we're both really worried about how is Cowboy going to look at 155, because he had trouble cutting into that weight class 6-7 years ago before he made his initial move up to 170, and normally weight doesn't get easier to cut as you get older. And that's the thing about Cowboy. He did have to cut the weight the last time out against Joe Lauzon, okay?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Remember when Tony Ferguson cut down to 155 and then did the exact same thing 2 weeks later and got his brain beat in by Justin Gaethje? I'm just saying, I don't love it when a guy cuts weight when they don't have to. And for Cowboy, it's not like he knew he didn't have to. Like, he was expecting to have a fight later on that day. But I don't love the fact that it is quite the extreme weight cut for him. And now he's going to have to put his body through it again. And again, I don't think Cowboy cuts a lot to get to 170. I even remember when he was fighting a lot more regularly at 170, he would talk about, hey, I only walk around at like 176, 174, so this weight cut isn't a big deal for me. I basically walk into a sauna, 10 minutes I walk out and I've lost the weight already. But still, if you've already compromised your body to a certain degree, do we know that you've already been able to recover 100% from that? And now that you're fighting a guy who, oddly enough, does have heavy hands, I didn't think I'd be calling Jim Miller at 38 years old at welterweight a heavy-handed fighter, but Miller is one of these guys who if you make a mistake, he can capitalize on it and it'll be the last mistake you make in the fight. But he has also been a fighter who, as of late, will sit down a lot more on his punches and really make you pay for his overhands and his hooks. And if Cowboy shows up to this fight like he showed up to the Alex Morono one, like that was by far the worst version of Cowboy we've ever seen.
That's it. You've seen the worst version of Cowboy's last time out. Standing TKO loss where he was like lost in that one. And Morono's a good striker. He's a Taekwondo black belt. He's got a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. But for Cerrone, it was a big step down from the guys he's been fighting. For Miller, he got wobbled a hard right hand from Nicholas Mata in the first round of that fight, and then he just kind of like stumbles back in and rolls with it and then gets right back into the fight. And I look at the finishing sequence in that one. It was leg kick going body head and right hook into the ground and pound where he's able to finish Mata. So it was wild stuff from Miller. So you have like A10 at his peak in his last fight against Donald Cerrone at his worst in that fight against Alex Morono. And the last time you saw Cowboy in a ring, in a cage, was a year and a month ago. The last time you saw Jim Miller was just about 4 months ago. So I do look at this one. You look at the odds. Miller open to minus 155, minus 220 right now. For Donald Cerrone, open to plus 135, plus 176, Matt. We'll have a look at the Tapology votes. Surprised that's there to you. I'm going to say over under 70% Miller.
Oh, yeah, over.
And it's 81% Miller, 481 total votes, 81% Miller, 19% Cerrone. The biggest key that I have to this one is I expect them to both strike, even though both guys are very, very strong grapplers. Jim Miller, the last time we saw him try and really get into an extended grappling sequence, the Joe Selecki fight, bigger guy, had success. Cerrone's been grappling with top guys at Syndicate, at the BMF Ranch. We saw him. Who did he take on? Didn't he take on Craig Jones at a grappling tournament here in the last 6 months or so?
He's been doing a lot more no-gi stuff.
He's been doing no-gi stuff, so you like to see that one. But this is the biggest key to me in this fight, and I could be completely wrong in this one, but Jim Miller coming into this one a southpaw. The body kicks open against an orthodox Donald Cerrone who struggled against body kicks, so it opens that up, opens the lead leg, but power for power, that makes this fun, and at 170, that could be a key for Cerrone to capitalize on.
I like Jim Miller on the feet, but I'm not really convinced of his kicks, and this is why. Cowboy can defend body kicks pretty well. He is good at getting his knee up to help kind of make that whole post to defend kicks. The problem is, how long is he going to be able to keep any kind of sustainable defense? Because for Jim Miller, I've seen him get hurt and recover from those big shots. It happens almost in every Jim Miller fight. Like win, lose, or draw, he gets hit clean, gets wobbled, and then normally gets way meaner, gets way more aggressive, and we'll see what happens after that. When's the last time we saw Cowboy get hit by a big shot that didn't immediately lead to a finishing sequence? It's been years.
Like that Tony Ferguson fight, like I know he blew his nose and whatever, but you have to get to the point where you blow your nose for it then to blow up.
Like, Tony landed a right-hand jab, ducked out of a shot, and then hit him with a spinning elbow. Like, Cowboy at this stage of his career is a very upright boxer who will throw kicks. I should liken him a lot more to a Muay Thai artist because he does throw a lot more kicks. But other than the Anthony Pettis fight where he hit him with a head kick in the third round of that fight, he hasn't really been doing a lot of massive damaging shots as of late. So I don't think Cowboy's all of a sudden going to become the fighter that he used to be. And chin and durability is one of the few areas of MMA that you can never get back once it's gone. Roy Jones Jr. is one of my favorite fighters regardless of sports ever. But in 2003, he lost 5% of his athleticism. And when you're as good as he is and as fast as he is, you can get away with a lot of mistakes. And when you make all those mistakes and then lose your athleticism, it's going to get you caught that much earlier. I think with Cowboy, he was able to be unorthodox because he was so fast, he was so powerful. But at this stage of his career, he doesn't really have that level of explosiveness. So I worry about him a lot in this fight against Jim Miller. I favor him slightly, or I like him a little bit more in this fight just because it's at 170. But I still think Miller's going to be able to get the win.
Look at Cerrone with that tie stance to have that lead leg up and be able to block some of those kicks from Miller, because Miller really does depend on the leg kicks to set up his shots. More looping shots out of Miller, straight shots out of Cerrone. You could have a lot of success there, Matt, but for me, it's Miller time. It's high life time. Jim Miller to win the rematch between these two guys. Both of us going with the man out of... They bill him out of Sparta, New Jersey. It is Jim Miller to get the win. I love this fight. Let us know down below in the comment section whether you have A10, whether it's Cowboy. We have some big-time fights left on this card. Some big ones at 185, including the main event between Israel Adesanya and Jared Cannonier. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say,
let's get into it.